Hi everyone. Just before I start today's story, I want to say thank you so much for 5,000 subscribers. It means the absolute world to me. Every story I write takes place in a connected universe, which means you'll see organizations and supernatural ideas overlapping. There's always a thread that binds everything together throughout my stories. Those of you who are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button for more and be sure to hit the bell so you never miss out on anything new that I post. That's all. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. We resurrected a man who had been dead for 5 days. He was followed by something from the afterlife. This something was neither God nor the devil, though it came from what must be the closest thing to that great beyond from religious scriptures. The dead aren't supposed to come back. We know that now. In fact, knowing what I know, I wish that I'd never been born at all, as that's the only way to escape it all. From the moment we come to exist, there is no way out, and I have been cursed for my sin of challenging nature to face the place that comes after death. A place already torturous enough for those who do play by the rules, but it'll be far more wretched for my team. On January the 31st, 2025, my colleagues and I witnessed an event unexplainable by the laws of nature, or, at the very least, unexplainable by our laws of nature. By that I mean that there are hidden threads which bind our reality together. Threads left unaddressed by even the futuristic science of this agency. This fabric of existence binds us to other realities and places past reality. These are threads of magic to our primitive minds. And I say all of this as a biochemist, as a pragmatic man. I'm still an atheist, that's the worst part. You see, no religion accounts for what we experienced. Test subject 147 died on January the 26th, and he was resurrected on January the 31st. He was nobody special. An ordinary man who died in an extraordinarily terrible way during a hike. He tripped and struck his head against a rock, suffering a fatal head trauma. 147 was one of many recently deceased subjects entered into this medical trial. A trial orchestrated by my unnamed government branch. We were striving to conquer death, in a way. But this was less about achieving immortality, and more about reversing tragic events, helping those who have died as the result of unnatural causes, such as 147's head wound. We utilised technology far beyond anything accessible to the modern world, the public world, of machines and medicine. 147, like the other subjects, seemed fated for failure. We worked tirelessly to revive the patient, but days passed and his body decayed. Yet we battled against nature, repairing damage to 147's skin, brain, lungs, heart, and so forth. Time was of the essence. After all, even our advanced scientific procedure had limitations. In any public hospital, a family would be told, after a matter of hours, that a deceased patient could not be revived. But this wasn't a public hospital. It was an unholy place. For our act of defiance against the natural world and that other place, my colleagues and I will all burn in a realm darker than hell. I no longer think hell exists at all, truth be told. I think it to be a soft, cosy fantasy our ancestors invented to distract themselves from the real afterlife, somewhere far worse. I don't want to get bogged down by a tangent on various religious ideologies. I don't know whether any sacred text is right. All I know is that there exists something after life. I've seen it. Seen where souls go to rest. It exists beyond, below, above, and between the very atoms of our reality. That must be why some still feel the presence of their deceased loved ones. After jolting upright at 7:17 p.m. on January the 31st, Subject 147 didn't utter anything profound. All the man on the operating table had to say, well, rather, scream for himself, was, "No!" The dozen Dr. Frankensteins in that room gasped as they marvelled at their creation. We were witches and wizards of science, eyeing 147 like a specimen in a petri dish, rather than a human being. By that point, Subject 147 should have been a bloated corpse, but putrefaction had been stalled, undone, even, by the medical and technological sorcery of our doctors. 147 was a medical marvel, no doubt about that, but we were forgetting that he was also a human, a soul. I speechlessly remained at the side of the room and gawped aimlessly as my colleagues rushed towards the table. Resurrection had always been the objective, but I'd only ever seen it as a hypothetical. I was struggling to accept the reality of the situation. Before Subject 147, no living human on Earth had been clinically dead for longer than 17 hours. For good reason. The following transcript comes from video footage recorded on that day. Evidence which, much like everything else I've told you, is classified. None of that matters now. Everything pales in the face of the great beyond. Where am I? Hello, Mr. My name's Dr. Thatcher. This may be hard for you to understand, but you're in a... well, let's call it a private clinic. You're in shock, which is quite understandable, but I promise that you're safe. In fact, we just saved your life. No, I was dead. Remarkable. Do you mind explaining how you know that, Mr. Were you aware of your passing, so to speak? How am I here? Modern medicine and a team of highly trained specialists. We've been attempting to heal and revive deceased patients. You are the first success in the trial. But I hit my... How did you fit... No, I shouldn't be here. I was gone for too long. I was gone for 5 days, Mr. Do you understand? This wasn't a standard resuscitation procedure. We healed you. We reversed your decay. Reversed death itself. This raises many existential questions for you, I'm sure, but I'm more concerned with science than philosophy. The mere fact that you're alive and conscious is a miracle in itself. When we finally introduce this research to the scientific community, you'll go down in history. I know you don't fully understand, but you keep saying that, Doctor, but you're the one who doesn't understand. You shouldn't have brought me back. I keep telling you that I was gone for too long. I understand that this must be an incredibly stressful experience for you, Mr. But I promise that you have nothing to fear. You're healthy. Your body was kept from... Do you want to know about my experience of death? Do you want to know what I saw? Well, as I said, a scientist, not a philosopher. I'm intrigued, of course, but it'll be for others to decide whether your memories should be called spiritual or psychological phenomena. I personally believe that when your body shut down at the time of death, your brain will have fired. I'm not talking about my brain. I'm not talking about my body either. I'm talking about the... Well, I don't know whether I believe in a soul. I just know I've been somewhere. A dark place between places. Here, but not here. Floating in the black, trying to scream, but having no mouth to release the sound. Having nothing but the dark and my thoughts. Well, that'll be a fascinating conversation to have with religious and philosophical experts, but I'm a biochemist, Mr. I'm more concerned with the science, yes, so you keep saying, but I'm telling you that I was somewhere, and as dark as that place may have been, there are darker places. I've seen them. He seems to be very distressed. Go and fetch Dr. Rawls whilst I continue talking with the subject. My name is... and you're not listening to me. Please calm down, Mr. You need to watch your blood levels. Your body has endured massive trauma. When Dr. Rawls arrives, she's going to run some tests on you. Check your bodily functions. In the meantime, I want you to know that I am listening to you, but you're not thinking clearly right now. As I said, that's understandable. You've achieved something that the human body shouldn't be able to do. Yes, finally we agree on something. For different reasons. It shouldn't be possible, but we made it possible. You made it possible. Your body fought to survive, fought to come back. This will change humanity, Mr. You'll come to see that once you've settled into your body, settled into living again. Oh, I'm not going to be here for long, Doctor. He won't allow that. It will torture us all forever, Doctor. That empty place I described, it is nothing compared to the other place I saw. A place of eternal pain. Right. I'm more than a little worried about your mental state, Mr. But Dr. Rawls is on the way, and she'll tell us whether the machines are right, whether your body ticks all the boxes. In the meantime, I'd like you to just lie back down and, as I said, remain calm. And that is the end of the transcript. Of course, not all was transcribed, and certainly not the horror that followed. Firstly, the transcript doesn't account for the conversation I had with Dr. Glenfield. We were leaning against the room's side wall, giving Dr. Thatcher and Subject 147 a wide berth whilst they talked. What do you think is wrong with him? Glenfield asked me near silently, before nodding at the patient. For a moment, I'd thought that she might be talking about Dr. Thatcher, and that made me smile slightly. I don't know, I replied, but none of this seems right, does it? The man's vitals are fine, but he's not him. I don't know, he doesn't seem healthy, does he? In his mind. Well, we should wait until Dr. Rawls has confirmed that, shouldn't we? Glenfield pointed out. I nodded. I suppose so, but everything seems to check out. His mental faculties should be fine. We don't know how he should be. Glenfield pointed out. This is uncharted territory, Dr. Thornton. Maybe the patient is right. Maybe what? You're not serious, I scoffed. I didn't picture you as the religious type. She tutted. This has nothing to do with religion. We've pushed the human body beyond its limits. Yes, we may have staved off the effects of decomposition, but it took us 5 days to resurrect him. 5. What if we've missed something? All sorts of things might happen to the human body after death. Things that leave no way back. I shook my head and nodded at 147. He came back. He's conscious. He's fine. Fine physically. Yes, but what about the long-term effects? She asked. What have we done to him? You're right, he's not right psychologically, and I think we've done something wrong, Dr. Thornton. You wanted to be a part of this project, I said. Well, I think I've changed my mind, Glenfield meekly stated, eyes swimming as they watched the haunted blue-gowned patient on the operating table. The patient who refused to lie back down. And you say it's just his mind, but something isn't right with his face. Don't you see that fear in his eyes? This goes beyond shock or trauma or some other psychological issue. That fear is real. You're starting to sound a little delirious, Dr. Glenfield. I think anybody would be afraid in this situation, I said. It's only natural that... And then came a sound which cut into my thought. Its pitch was, as impossible as this may seem, both low and high, both thunderous and shrill. Not 2 sounds, but one all-encompassing sound. A piercing bellow, which tore through the walls, the floor, and the ceiling of our operating theatre. A sound accompanied by a shift in the air, as if something had darkened the room. But the lights did not flicker. The power did not cut out. Something heavy hung in the air. What on earth was that? The doctor cried as gasps filled the room. Dr. Thatcher raised his hands. Everybody calm down. Remember, they're carrying out H-76 tests on the floor above us. Yeah, but just calm down. That didn't just come from above us, another doctor said amidst the low chatter. It can't be that. It came from everywhere. Subject 147 finished with a weak moan. Then he said, "It's here." What does he mean by that? He's crazy. No, he's not crazy. Look at his eyes. There's something in his eyes. There's something in his eyes. Dr. Thatcher attempted to enforce normalcy and cohesion as people continued to chatter nervously. Will somebody go and check on Carlton? She was supposed to bring rolls. It shouldn't take them this long to walk down a corridor. Suddenly, Subject 147 stunned every doctor in the room by lunging towards the operating trolley. Lunging, without warning, towards the scalpel sitting tantalizingly in the tray. He managed to seize the sharp instrument, then turn its blade towards his neck. But a pair of residents succeeded in wresting the tool out of his hands. Given what happened next, I wish they hadn't stopped him. Kill me! the red-eyed patient screamed as the two doctors struggled to hold him down, and froth flew from his screeching lips. Then Dr. Thatcher loudly announced, "Right, so I need 147 restrained immediately, as he poses a threat to himself and others. Whilst you do that, I'm going to find Dr. Carlton and Dr. Rawls. Okay?" The elderly chief spun towards the theatre's main door, then he flung it open and exited the room. The white-haired, deep-wrinkled man grunted as he scurried away. Just idiots, the lot of them. Fragile body clearly disapproving of his great hurry. As the door swung shut behind him, the doctor's rapid, clumping footsteps faded towards the left. Seconds later, a fresh series of clumps sounded from the right-hand side of the corridor. Then came a muffled shout, followed by the operating room's main door swinging back open. Dr. Thatcher stood in the entrance, eyes wide and uncharacteristically jittery, though that was mostly concealed by his glasses' misty lenses. But I saw it, saw that something had shaken the unshakable man, and that was the first thing to unsettle my gut. Thatcher shot his eyes towards Glenfield and me. "You two, doing absolutely nothing at the back. Yes, you. Come with me." Like scalded schoolchildren, Glenfield and I begrudgingly nodded our heads and followed our leader into a surprisingly dark hallway. In that moment, I supposed that there had been a power cut after all. Supposed that would have been the source of the almighty sound we'd heard. But I knew that didn't quite add up. "Should we contact someone about the lights?" Glenfield asked as the three of us headed down the unlit corridor, illuminated only by the glow pouring through the operating theatre's wide window. "Just follow me," Thatcher murmured, voice starting to lose its brutishness and stability, starting to crack. "I need to get your opinions." The old man's voice disappeared as we slipped into the heaviest shadow of the hallway, the shadow through which I could no longer see anything. All sound faded into nothing, only for a moment, and then, as if my ears had popped at high altitude, all sound returned, all light too. Thatcher gasped, and Glenfield did the same. I, on the other hand, didn't manage to utter a sound. I was still struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. We were right back where we'd started. Right back by the operating theatre. In a panicked state, the three of us didn't pause to think, didn't pause to talk. We dashed down the corridor a second time, a third time for Dr. Thatcher, and welcomed the dark end of the hallway once again. We passed the operating theatre, which we should have left far behind us, and followed that same corridor into the blackness, into the silence, again and again and again. The operating theatre returned again and again and again. "Explain this to me. Somebody, please. We just ran in a straight line," Thatcher said, as we staggered once more towards the room on our left. Towards that window, releasing an island of light into the black hallway. We need to call someone," I suggested, brain stubbornly refusing to accept the truth of the situation. That we had, impossibly, found ourselves in a spatial loop, that dimly lit portion of the corridor was our entire reality. Only 50 yards in length, most of which was lined on the left by that large glowing window. We were being beckoned back to the theatre. The room was all that existed any longer. With a stammering voice, Glenfield said, I think we need to... I've no idea what she was about to suggest, as my colleague was silenced by the operating theatre's light extinguishing. By our new world's only light extinguishing. And it extinguished with the faintest click, as if somebody had simply flipped a switch in their home. With the death of that light, we found ourselves in total blackness. I heard fabric rustling, and then a phone torch cut through the darkness. Dr. Thatcher was lighting the corridor, revealing that we were only a few yards from the entrance to the dark operating theatre. No longer a beacon of light, but a black hole that seemed even less inviting than the hallway. In spite of this, Thatcher inched towards the theatre, and Glenfield followed. "Wait," I began. But the door had already started to open, and the two doctors were shuffling into the room, the horribly silent room. So I unwillingly followed and stood alongside Glenfield, peering over Thatcher's shoulder at the large oblong laboratory, a room 30 yards wide and 60 yards long. His phone's meagre torch did not illuminate the entire space. It didn't even reach the operating table, a mere 20 yards ahead of us. "Hello?" our leader called, his voice no longer loud, but wispy and frail. And there came responses. Whimpers. Whimpers so quiet that, much like the phone light, they barely filled the immense space. It was difficult to pinpoint the sounds, but we shuffled across the room, and Dr. Thatcher eventually landed his torch beam upon our missing colleagues. 8 trembling doctors were sitting on the floor, huddling together against the theatre's right-hand wall. Their eyes shot towards the glare of Thatcher's torch, and they all violently shook their heads from side to side. They seemed to be warning him to not make another sound. Even without seeing Dr. Thatcher's face, I heard the inhale, heard him prepare to speak, but thankfully the man stalled when the sounds of squelching began. Sounds far more distinct than the muffled sobbing of our colleagues, and far easier to locate. Thatcher immediately cast his torch beam ahead, towards the operating table, but the light once again did not puncture the darkness. The phone's torch was hardly effective, of course, but it seemed that a black fog had also taken the room. It seemed as impossible as it sounds, as if we could simultaneously see less and more of reality. We pushed forwards until the beam finally caught the edge of the table. Finally caught Subject 147. The moment the light caught his body, the squelching ceased. We saw only 147's profile, and I was relieved to find that his face hadn't changed much. His eyes seemed more vacant, perhaps, but that was all. He was sitting up and looking towards the right-hand wall, but when Thatcher shakily shot his torch to the spot that had captured 147's attention, I exhaled in relief. 147 was looking at nothing at all. though I do still wonder whether, as Thatcher started to move the torch back to the left, I may have seen something. It lasted for no more than a quarter second. There was a black line, 3 curved prongs sprouting from its end, that vanished into the air. It almost looked like a slim arm and fingers. But I had seen too much that I did not understand, and I didn't think I could handle any more. So I dismissed it as a shadow cast by the torch. Though that still doesn't quite make sense. The thing slipped out of sight quicker than the torch beam moved across surfaces. To my eyes, something was hiding from view. I was gone for too long, the patient whispered, drawing our focus. When Dr. Thatcher illuminated 147's face once again, the man had twisted his entire body towards us at an awkward diagonal angle, fingers white-knuckling the edge of the table. Shockingly, the patient had stripped the gown from his body in the few seconds we'd been looking away. He had done so, most unnervingly, with inexplicable speed and silence. And when our cowering colleagues started to blubber more loudly, I understood why they were shivering against the wall in fear. On the patient's left-hand side, his arm and leg were both missing. They were not bloody stumps. That would have been gruesome and sickening, but all too natural, all too explainable. No, at the end of the stumps, each an inch in length, were stapled folds of skin. Had not been dismembered, but crushed between 2 walls, 2 invisible layers of reality, which were still sealing the wounds. "Why didn't you let me die?" 147 whimpered. Before Thatcher had a chance to apologise or answer in any way, there came a horror that I will never scrub from my eyes. The very air of the room itself, filled with that dim fog, parted, tore like a wound, creating a hole between the very particles of matter. It was not a large tear. It was slight, like a paper cut, less than a hair's width, yet undeniable to the human gaze. I know what I saw. It was a ripple, through which I expected that 3-pronged arm to emerge, the shape that I may well have not seen at all. That is the lie I still tell myself. A shape, perhaps, that may have been false, may have been a visual representation of something for which there exists no visual representation. It happened so suddenly. Subject 147's remaining limbs were taken by the second wound, clamping down on his skin as he wailed. And then the wounds began to shrink, began to shorten and curl, bending the patient's screeching body forwards, folding 147 into himself. And as fresh rips appeared in the air, flattening what remained of the poor man like a pancake, his lips opened. It was all barely caught by Thatcher's meagre torchlight, but we saw enough, saw too much, as a translucent gas slipped from his open lips, only to be swallowed by one final wound. "Live as long as you can," were Subject 147's final haunting words. And then the last of his face ceased to be anything at all, leaving nothing on the operating table to prove that he was ever there. Not even the gaseous substance that Dr. Glenfield would later call the man's soul. The black fog lifted with a large thud, much like the earlier one, and light returned, as did the rest of the world. It took our team quite some time to go out and explore, of course, but we did, and we immediately put an end to all other experiments with the remaining deceased subjects. Subject 147 was revived at 7:17 p.m. on January the 31st, 2025. He disappeared at 7:26 p.m. on January the 31st, 2025. We don't know what happened to us during that 9-minute period. The security tapes from the laboratory and the main corridor recorded only black, unlit spaces during that time, as if the fog were heavier than we'd imagined. And though we recorded all audio from the experiment, there seems to be some corruption within the file. The sounds of our voices cannot be heard after Dr. Thatcher instructed Glenfield and me to follow him. In fact, what we do hear doesn't align with what we saw and heard whilst we were in that room. Low whispering, in a tongue that doesn't match any language on Earth. Perhaps not whispering at all, some of my colleagues claim, but it sounds like a voice to me. One low and high in pitch. Like that awful sound which pushed us into the spatial loop. Subject 147's voice sounded clearly though. It was the only clear voice in the room. And the microphone recorded words that every doctor is absolutely certain we did not hear the patient say. "Spare them! Spare them the pit!" he cried, moments before falling into nothing. He was talking of that other place, the one of eternal torture. I know it. It is the place that will claim me and the others when we die. Even my terrified mind, I am sure, still falls short of comprehending this afterlife which awaits. A nightmare beyond mortal understanding. And the records suggest that Subject 147 was a good man. No criminal record, no signs of sinful behaviour which religions might blame for his infinite suffering. Yet his soul was doomed to exist in a perpetual nothingness of black. Your moral compass means nothing. Even if you avoid our mistake, our defiance of nature's laws, and dutifully obey the beings from the great beyond, who is to say that they will spare you? Who is to say that they are benevolent? Above all else, ask yourself, does a warm, welcoming afterlife even exist? There may be no such thing as resting in peace. We may all be doomed to eternal torture.